I'm not going to act like I'm not heartbroken. At how, when there is an absence of the experience of love, such error and sadness and hurt can take place. Death happens every day. And there's a beautiful man in our neighborhood that was here before the last Sunday we met, and not here on the planet now. And no doubt, it's because someone needed love. No doubt. It's because someone hasn't learned to love themselves. And that's not about a specific one someone. It is and it's not. It's about the collective. It's about all of us learning that love is so critical, and love can seem like this airy-fairy idea, like learn to love yourself, learn to love each other. But when you truly do, when you truly learn love, when you truly find that inside of yourself, there is no harm you want to do to any human being on the planet. Something breaks inside of you, right? And it breaks open, and there is no longer a wall or a barrier between you and anyone else in the world. Not an animal, not a mountain, not a lake, not a child, not a beloved. But when we haven't learned to love ourselves, we can be in darkness. And that darkness causes suffering, that darkness causes separation. When we haven't learned to love each other, it causes horrors. It's time we learn to love ourselves, and we learn to trust ourselves, and we learn to love each other and to trust each other. And of course, in the collective consciousness, this is always emerging. And this is always our practice and our path. We have the beauty in unity, the beauty in unity. And, a lot of people think that unity is an easy road because we don't teach that, there's this outside everything that is running and ruining and ruling your life, but we teach that you're connected with all of it, that it expresses in, through, and as you, that, in fact, the moment that you think you have an idea or a block or a boundary or a wall around your concept, it's just flown right open. It just blows right open into greater wholeness, into a greater expansive experience of love. And you learn, don't you? You learn to stop analyzing and thinking about it all so much, and you learn to start experiencing it. But one of the beauties for me about unity is that when we presence the things going on in our world, rather than it bringing more fear or more anger and more hatred, although those things are part of the human condition, it actually brings us to our knees in love. Because rather than seeing something as an evil outside of someone or an evil inside of someone, we see everything as a deep and profound cry for love. A deep and profound cry for love. And rather than making us angry, even though anger is a part of the journey sometimes of the human condition, it's part, and it's a natural part, we don't need to shove it away, but that transforms into this power of love, into this practice of being so aware, so observant, so gentle, and so also strong, so fierce in our love and so gentle in our love, that we recognize that we are walking in a wondrous energy, that we are wondrously made, and that we have a great call to be and to bring more love. Now, a lot of people in unity, and a lot of you have told me yourselves, that you were taught not to question things. That maybe when you were growing up, the religion of your education or the upbringing that you had, that when things didn't make sense to your sweet little child mind, and you said, wait, how could God work like that? How could this be? That you challenged those things. And maybe that wasn't very popular in your family. Maybe that wasn't very popular in your spiritual upbringing. But you did it because things didn't make sense to you. And you had the courage. You had the courage to ask questions. I am convinced now that our education system needs to be saturated, that it is crucial that in our education system that we teach children to learn how to reason and to think, that we teach them to learn to trust themselves, not to digest and regurgitate facts, but critical thinking skills and learning to trust their knowings, learning to explore. And learning that it's safe to explore, that it's safe to question, that it's safe to not understand or to disagree. These skills that are life skills and they're spiritual skills, I think are the only thing that with resilience will teach children how to become awake and aware in life and not to be, and I'm going to say it, not to be brainwashed, but to allow them to be able to choose their lives, to allow them the space and the safety to be able to trust their inner impulses and to be able to evolve and to learn, to be able to grow, to be able to trust. Now, that's not always so popular, especially not in organizations and organizational systems, because organizational systems tend to put definitions around things. They tend to box things up and make them all tidy and then teach them. But spiritual experience and spirit is not something you can tie up with a bow and sell. It's not something that you can give away like it's a chocolate hand to someone that if they eat, they'll get the same thing you got, is it? It's not at all. It's an experience. We can only talk about it. We can only point to it. We can only question it. We can only wrestle with it. And in fact, sacred scripture itself says that it is all written upon your heart. That it is all written upon your heart. So what does that mean? That truly means that we have it all right here and right now. If it is written on my heart, it is written on your heart, it is written in every heart, and I believe that it is written in the rivers and the clouds, in the grass and the sky. It is written in everything. There is no place it is not. It can be discovered and it can be intuitive, it can be felt anywhere at any time. And there is no need for one to put their own reality on another. It is time that we learn to trust our inner authority rather than selling out to trust the authority of someone else. So many of us were taught not to do that. We were taught that we were rebels if we did that. I'm grateful that I was actually supported in that way growing up, that I was supported in those explorings, even to the point where I was one time I grew up Catholic. Many of you know that I grew up Catholic. But one of these times I was at one of those camps that I went to with a girlfriend. It was a Christian camp, and I went for a summer thing. And they did like an altar call kind of thing at it or whatever. And it was the first time I'd seen something like that. And I didn't stand up for it. I'm just thinking out loud. It wasn't that memorable of experience if I did stand up for it, because I don't remember standing up for it. So no, I didn't stand up. But I was very present in watching what's going on and thinking, this is interesting. This is different than anything I've ever seen. And there was a lot of love there and a lot of good things shared there. But I remember a point in the conversations where they said that, I believe it was meditation, anything about meditation or quiet, silence. And if anyone talks about God not being outside of you, if anyone talks about God within, that it is accessible right here within, that's the work of the devil. And I remember just getting these like shivers down my body, like this cold feeling, and thinking, oh, uh-oh. And I went to a payphones at the time. I went to a payphone and I called my mom. I remember being scared, but also doing a little processing right before I called her and thinking, because my mom at that time, as a Catholic, was expanding beyond the boundaries of the box of Catholicism, or not mystical Catholicism, but the tradition that she had been taught. And she was starting to talk about mindfulness, meditation, and God within. That this idea that God is a man on a cloud that is outside of you, or even a person, might be a limited thought, and that you can actually access God within. And that was, the practice that I grew up with, was trusting yourself. But I remember before I made that call, I thought, okay, so according to them, and it was scary to be in a room with a whole bunch of people that all of a sudden, the bottom line is your mom is going to hell and she's talking to the devil. Or the devil's talking to her, right? And I remember the distinction of the feeling between being scared of that as a possibility, like the power of collective fear, the power of being with a bunch of people that believe something that challenges their own internal knowing of truth. See, I knew my mom. I knew who she was. I knew her practice. I knew it was all love. But before I made that call, I kind of felt that. So I was kind of like 80% there. But I called her just to check, like, do we need to talk about this? Because listen, they're saying you're going to hell. And they said if anyone does this, this is what's happening. And I'm just noticing that even though I know what I feel, I know this isn't true, it feels scary to me. I feel scared. And I just remember there was not a bit of fear or worry. There was nothing in her voice, nothing at all. And it was just this gentle, calming reassurance of, you can always trust that. You can always trust yourself. And I know people are scared of that. And that's okay. There was nothing of like, go back and hate them. There was nothing about go back and make them wrong. And there was nothing about, oh my God, she found out. Or what if I lose my daughter to this? Limited idea. There was just this calm, peaceful presence of, you can trust yourself. And yes, people are scared of that. Now, luckily, we've evolved to some degree today that meditation doesn't scare people as much as it used to, but it used to be a scary thing for people, right? It used to be a teaching that people were afraid. If you get quiet, if you listen, that you're going to hear someone you don't want to hear. And you should be worried about that. You should be scared about that. And you, in fact, don't have the ability, the wisdom, or the discernment to know the difference. That you can't trust yourself. That you can't trust yourself because you could be led astray. Well, now, luckily, because medical doctors are prescribing meditation to everyone that has high blood pressure and about 8 million other things, it's kind of common knowledge that meditation and a practice in the silence is a very, very good and nourishing and nurturing thing for mind, body, and spirit. But the power of that fear and the power of selling out on our own truth, our own internal knowing, is reckless. So in fact, when we've asked questions and we've been called rebels, or we've been told we're breaking the rules, or paving too much of a path that's new rather than going with the grain, in fact, we're doing what the master teacher taught to do. In fact, we're standing for the spirit of the law and breaking the letter of the law. And the letter of the law, friends, needs to be broken, does it not? Even the Pope said this week in a homily that he was talking about Christians and referring to Christians who exploit or who have greed or who are tied up in anything that is unlike love, unlike kindness, unlike compassion. And he made a reference about that, saying something to the effect of, it's better to be an atheist than to be that kind of a Catholic. And that's coming from the Pope. But saying these labels are not where it's at. Right? These labels are not where it's at. It doesn't matter any of these labels we could put on ourselves. None of them matters. What matters is who you are, and are you listening to your heart, and are we expressing the love that is in our heart? Are we expressing according to our true nature? Call it whatever you want to call it. In this shooting that just happened in Olathe that took the life of Srinivas, you had a person take another person's life, and he had never even met him. He had never met him, never talked to him, didn't know anything about what he believed, knew nothing. But the glimpse of what I felt in that room, and I'm not calling that room bad because there was a bunch of love in that room, when I was growing up, and I heard my mom was going to hell because she was listening to the devil. There was a lot of love in that room too. But the glimpse that I got of when there is fear and a collective wording and pressing on that doesn't love, that doesn't include, that doesn't expand, is dangerous. And that's all that this child of God that walked in with the gun, that's all that he knew. That's all that he knows. He didn't know this beautiful man. He just heard words, right? He had feelings and words, ideas that were not firsthand, And it led an interaction between two people that never knew each other, and one to not have a physical life anymore, certainly a spiritual life, and the other to have taken that life. All in a cry for love. All in a cry for peace. We only act out like that in our human condition when there is a deep, deep, deep seated need for love, peace, and a cry. But if we sell out on what is in our hearts, if we sell out on listening firsthand, and we listen to the limited ideas of anyone around us, any institution, any structure, anything, we are missing out on everything. The time is over where we teach people that they need to just digest whatever we have and go by it and live by it. The time is on where we have first-hand experiences with individuals, first-hand experiences, and when we trust our experience and trust our gut and trust our heart. I remember a friend that I had a while back that had some quite limited ideas in reference to gay friends, and I remember saying to him, what would you be like if you believe this? What would you be like if you were around my friends? Like, what would it be like if we went to dinner and you were around my friends that were gay? And I remember him saying, well, I'd be nice, I'd be good. But you think these things and you believe these things. And after spending a bit of time with me and meeting my friends, some of the people that I introduced him to, he really had a lot of respect and love for, and that shifted, but it didn't shift through giving an idea. It didn't shift through saying, this is what you should think. It shifted by saying, are you open to meeting some people you might fall in love with? It shifts heart to heart and experience to experience. It's time that we stop telling children what to think, and we trust their inner knowing. We trust their beauty. We trust their goodness. It has broken my heart to hear stories of people's relatives teaching their children that then start crying when they find out all of their other friends aren't going to heaven. And what does that teach? That teaches a paradigm of superiority and inferiority. You know, we might not talk about that on the surface. We might just say on the surface that it just teaches, you know, that some, if you love Jesus in this way, then you're going here. If you love this, you know, religious figure in this way, you're going here. Whatever it is that religions teach. That's on the surface. But the detrimental fabric that's being woven is that one is inferior and one is superior. One is inferior and one is superior. One is inferior and one is superior. No spiritual awakened being taught that. The master teacher didn't teach that. And it is not an intuitive knowing in the hearts of children and in the hearts of humanity. It is a part of the human condition, and it's based on greed, and it's based on separation, and it's based on suffering. I have a friend who made a post this week that I thought was telling. He said, "It's not about the bathrooms, and it was never about water fountains." It's not about the bathrooms. And it was never about the water fountains. It's not about the bathrooms. And it was never about the water fountains. It's about the teachings of superior and inferior. And I am so grateful in unity that we know that we are all whole and perfect beings, that we are all born blessed and deserving of love, and that it is our core mission to awaken this love in every heart, to greet every heart with this love, and to keep pressing forth this love until it takes hold of one's being, however that needs to happen. One heart at a time, one conversation at a time, one hug at a time, one moment at a time. And it's hard, is it not, to be patient? It's hard. But this is the spiritual practice, to be in the absolute and in the relative. The relative is where we can go, oh, it's all messed up. And the absolute is where we know beyond a shadow of a doubt. We know these truths. We know God as love. We know all beings as born blessed. We know our perfect wholeness. We know that this walk in the human condition is the hero's journey, and that we are on this beautiful exploration of the evolution of consciousness. You know, in Unity, we say the only problem with the Bible is that there's a back cover. I'd say the only other problem is that you don't have the pen. But you do have the pen, don't you? You do have the pen. So let us not fall prey to someone's corrupt or lesser idea of what God is, or the capacity of God as love. When you trust your heart and know that the scroll is in your being, that the truth is written upon your heart, and you go to the pure essence of the heart, and you allow the heart to purify your thoughts, you allow the heart to purify your being, that is something that we can trust. But give away your power, and you will be angry when you realize and when you wake up and know that you've created injury or suffering because you took someone else's non-metabolized understanding of God and you used it to harm, or used it to hate, or used it to separate, or used it to press down. Our internal guidance system is worthy. What kind of creation would not be built with the fullness that is needed for its awakening? No matter how rocky the road or faulty the path you may take to arrive at your clarity and your wisdom, no matter how it may look. We can trust, I think, that we would regret the errors of taking on someone else's lesser idea and following someone else's lesser idea of what humanity is and what God is. I don't think we'll be regretting that we assumed too much of God. That we thought that God was just more loving than, right? Because I think that's the fear. I don't think we would regret, and I don't actually think it's possible that we could underestimate the power of the love of God consciousness in and through and as and among us. And sure, it's scary. It's scary because people who have fiercely stood in their internal knowing, people who have fiercely walked that path of love and equality rather than superiority and inferiority, people that have listened to their heart, they have ended up dead a lot of the times, have they not? Jesus on the cross, Martin Luther King being shot. You can go through a list. That's scary. Until you realize that that's the only true way to live. The only true way to live and have life is to learn to trust yourself. To learn to listen in silence, to listen to the heart, and to follow the bold path of love. There are many ministers and spiritual leaders, and I just so appreciate this Pope because this Pope is bringing it home. This Pope is saying what hasn't been said before. But there's a lot of spiritual leaders whose ideas go beyond what they teach from the pulpit. In fact, there's a lot of traditional Christian leaders that use Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary in their own preparation for delivering a sermon, but would hold back from letting all the people know that their God concept has evolved beyond the constructs and the confines of the religion that they're living in and preaching from. And the part that's a good thing is that it's a good thing that people get it. It's a good thing that they have gone beyond and broken the boundaries. And now the time is to be transparent about that, out loud about that, and alive about that. Any concept that you might have of God, that I might have of God, and I'm not talking about a man, I'm not talking about a person, I'm talking about a force field and energy, light, love, intelligence, the absolute divine itself expressing in and through as everything. Any concept we have, I am certain the truth is even more wondrous. So are we willing to start looking at what you'd like to believe? What you'd like to believe. I close with this story. I had a friend way back when we were learning about each other, and I said to him, what do you believe about God? What do you believe about spirituality, about life, about humanity? And he started with this statement. He said, what I'd like to believe, and then he went ahead filling the blanks. And I thought to myself, that is the most interesting thing I've heard. What I'd like to believe. What I'd like to believe. That's our assignment, is to ask that question of yourself, to ask that question of others. This may be what you're taught. This may be what you read. What do you know in your heart? And tell me more about what you'd like to believe is true. Namaste.